With businesses reopening, there is expected to be an uptick in COVID-19 cases and also an expected uptick in scams like fake COVID-19 tests, treatments, and cures circulating online. U.S. Attorney Jay Town reminds us that no legitimate treatment or test would be advertised to the public using a phishing email or text, and that you can find FDA-approved testing methods and labs on federal or .gov websites. He says these scams might be here to stay.
This is going to go on for a while, folks. This is not going to be something that ends when everything opens up. These frauds will continue, and they will continue for years.
If you get any suspicious COVID-19 emails or texts, remember not to click on the link. You can call the National Center for Disaster Fraud hotline and send screenshots of those scams to the FBI tip line at tips@fbi.gov. Find more information on rocketcitynow.com.